Can I ask you, Dan, are these new economic conditions or all the things we're talking about that are changing, does that have you looking for new types of customers or different type of work?
So not necessarily, but here's how I'd phrase it. So you are correct that the economic uncertainty that we face now is causing a lot of problems. But I think you and I would normally be looking when we look externally, right? We're looking at economic conditions, political conditions, legal and regulatory. We're looking at all, what historically has been this remote look at what's going on. And the economy's always been part of it. Do I need to borrow this year? Do I not need to borrow? Where are rates? So I do agree with you that there's a lot of uncertainty. And part of the problem that we see is that customers are getting now, in the past, there'd be conflicting information, but there'd be some reasonable amount of good information that they could get. Now, with the speed at which I'll use the word misinformation can get put out there, or maybe slanted, or information that someone's trying to make a point gets out in there, and you're now having too much information and you're having to sort through it. So we look at it this way and say, yes, the economy is a big deal for us. But what we have to change is once we decide on the menu of initiatives, how we look at the evaluation of whether those are successful or not. Because in the past, pre COVID, we would do things like say, we need to once a year look at the premises on which we set our strategies and see if the underlying assumptions are still valid. Now you almost have to do that on a 6-month basis because of the way things are happening. So you can defend against the economic uncertainty, but you have to change, I believe, internally your strategic evaluation process. And there's things like special alert control will say, if our strategy is dependent on these things, but this one most important thing happens, we have to immediately look at our strategy. Well, COVID certainly threw all that out the window, and now it's very hard. So there is this economic certainty. I read today, right before we got on, one person saying that they believe that there is not going to be a recession. It'll be very soft. Other people saying, why can't you read the tea leaves correctly? There is going to be a recession. And then if you look at the individual, indicators, it does indicate that there's probably going to be some softening of some sort. The question is just going to be how deep. And then a lot of it depends on what the consumer ends up doing because the level of consumer spending in the economy is so great. And when you're reading newspaper articles, one newspaper article says there's not going to be a recession. One newspaper article says there's going to be a recession. At the end of the day, it's going to be very confusing for people to make headway on information that in the past wasn't that difficult to get good information to interpret. The second thing is we're all going to have to change the speed at which we react, right? Because this information is coming so fast and social media allows it to spread so fast that you internally in our organizations, whether we say it's it's a semi-annual look now, or it's going to be an annual look with monthly rechecks, all of that has to be thrown out the window and you have to act much more quick. So part of my answer to your question is I do think this economy is going to enter into some kind of a downturn. I just can't decide on how deep it's going to be, right? And then what does that mean for us in our industry? I tell you, I don't really care as long as I've got the proper evaluation controls in place. And I would look at it three ways, right? The one is, what does our monthly operations look like? Pretty standard look at what you and I might normally look at. But then we say, are we executing? That might be something that maybe we only did quarterly in the past. You might have to move that up to something monthly. And then you say, is my strategy the right strategy? In other words, are those underlying assumptions, premises that I base my strategy on still valid? Don't we used to say do that annually. Forget it. You got to do that in 6 months from now. And then maybe next year in the spring, you say, okay, now I can push it to the end of 24, depending on what's happening. I just believe that the speed at which we have to respond to some of these has changed significantly from the past. The concept is still there. We still need to look at it and think about it, just the speed.
I gotta be honest, I feel so much better talking to you, even in with it, because you're validating a lot of the things I'm doing and feeling. And, as a small business owner and really any business leader, you go through work in this environment and you start thinking, am I just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get me, right? You start thinking, am I overthinking this? And what I'm hearing from you is more, better analytics, more frequent analytics. My head is on swivel all the time about capturing good data and information. And then I believe in our plan and our model and what we're doing, but there are so many things that can knock it off course. I'm a I know you know the names Charlie Munger and Warren
Yeah.
Buffett, right? On the Berkshire Hathaway boys. It was Charlie who said, he said earlier this year, he said, we really are stumbling through a zombie economy right now. And I think that's going to probably continue into 2024. And I don't know if he was saying until there's a US election and that's decided, because it doesn't look any clearer, when you look at that. But I mean, would you agree with that? What do you see that meaning? Is it just so much uncertainty? You're just kind of,
Well,
we're all blindly going through
well, there's always been ambiguity, right? But I agree with you. I agree with Charlie, and that I don't know if I'd say it's quite the zombie, but I agree that there's a lot of ambiguity, right? And our tolerance for that ambiguity is going to be, as leaders, how we respond to some of this stuff. So it's very
Yeah.
exciting to hear you say, I believe in my plan. I believe in my plan. So then all you really need to do is say, forget the uncertainty. I just need to make sure that as I start putting my plan into action and as I'm measuring results, maybe I need to change the frequency in which I'm looking at those. Specifically, do I have the right strategy and am I executing properly? Move those up, and I think you'll do great, because that uncertainty has never been a problem for a leader like you. Because if your tolerance for ambiguity was any worse, you wouldn't be where you're at. So I think you can see through this words like zombie economy and other stuff and say, I don't care as long as I know what my plan B is if the strategy is not working. So if you can accurately get excited about your plan and understand as to what success looks like in that plan, and if you're not reading it, if you're not meeting that, I mean, what you need to do next, then don't worry about the uncertainty. For that uncertainty shouldn't bother you. There's no problems. There's only opportunities.
I think I should remind you that Blockbuster Video believed in their plan and their model too, Dan.
You're not
So,
Blockbuster Video.
I thank you. I'm not Blockbuster Video. But
Yeah.
the point is, man, the industry, which is moving so fast, right? The ground can shift from under any of us, which, to your point, I think is why we're constantly and more frequently checking our
Yes.
our
And,
analytics.
and when you refer to Blockbuster Video, I do understand the comment you make, but I don't think our industry is going that way. There would not be the level of outside investment by a lot of new types of players in our industry if they didn't believe in face-to-face and events having a pretty strong future. And that's why I, it's exciting to hear you say I believe in my plan, because that plan should be taking advantage of some of that opportunity. There's still a shakeout, in my opinion, of firms in the industry trying to figure out where their space is and whether they want to be in this. So you were one of the things you said that really struck me. You said to me in 2018, 2019, you said, go on your floor, Dan, go on your shop floor and look at the average age of the people out on that shop floor. And at the time, we did not have this concern about the COVID workforce. You were just talking in general because the industry was maturing to a spot where at some point we were going to lose a big amount of our people who've been with the industry for 30, 40 years, and all that experience is going to leave. And you're right. I went out on the floor and the average age was like 55, right? And so I looked out, whoa, boy, this doesn't look, this is a problem. And then COVID hit and kind of threw it out the window because they all left anyway, right? But that workforce development that you talked about and the recovery was what hit a lot of firms hard. And for the ones that made it through, there's opportunity to either innovate in the way they approach their clients or to maybe partner, pick up, merge, buy, whatever from some of these other firms that have decided I can't navigate the field like Crew can or Dursey can. And so I still believe that part of your plan needs to be flexible enough that when opportunity like that arises, you can take advantage of it.